My grandpa asked shocked, "Buddy, why did you come by taxi? What happened to the BMW we gave you for your 21st birthday?" Before I could reply, my mom smiled. "That car is her sister's now." My grandpa paused, thinking. And what he did next made me so proud. I still remember the feeling of dread as I stepped out of that taxi. I'd just paid the fare, but the real cost of that day was about to hit me hard. My mother, Carol, stood there, a saccharine smile on her face, and casually announced that my brand new BMW belonged to my sister now. My entire world just tilted. The circular driveway of my grandparents' sprawling estate felt less like a welcome and more like a walk toward an execution. The manicured hedges, the familiar fountain where I'd once tossed pennies, they all just amplified the tension coiling in my gut. My grandfather, Arthur, spotted me from the front steps, his initial joy quickly fading into confusion as he scanned the empty driveway behind me. He was 78, but still sharp as a tack, those piercing blue eyes missing nothing. He came down to hug me, then pulled back. "Chloe, sweetheart. Where's the BMW? Did something happen to it?" Before I could even open my mouth, Carol's voice rang out. "Oh, Dad, didn't I tell you?" She smiled, the kind that made my skin crawl. "The car belongs to Sophia now." It just made more sense that way. The words hung heavy. Grandpa Arthur's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and then something harder, something I'd only seen a handful of times in my life. He looked at me, then at Carol, then back at me again. "Come inside, Chloe," he said quietly. "We need to talk." My grandmother, Eleanor, was already in the living room. The moment she saw my face, she knew. Carol followed us in, still wearing that smug smirk, completely oblivious to the storm brewing. "Start from the beginning," Grandpa Arthur said, settling into his leather armchair. "And I want the whole story." So I told them everything. It started when I was 14. Carol had always made it clear my younger sister, Sophia, was her favorite. Sophia could do no wrong, every accomplishment was celebrated, every failure excused. Me? I was the disappointment, never quite measuring up. When I got into nursing school at 21, my grandparents were ecstatic. They'd always supported my dreams of working in healthcare, of helping people. They gave me that BMW for my birthday, telling me how proud they were, how much they believed in me. It was more than just a car, it was validation, proof someone saw my worth. But Carol saw it differently. Within a month, she started her campaign. Sophia needed a car for her university commute. Public transportation wasn't safe. Their old sedan kept breaking down. It would just be temporary, Carol insisted, and besides, didn't I live close enough to the hospital to take the bus? I said no. A dozen times, I said no. The car was a gift from my grandparents, and I needed it for my early morning and late night shifts. But Carol was relentless. She enlisted my father, David, who gave me disappointed lectures about family and selfishness. She had Sophia crying at dinner about feeling unsafe. Every family gathering became a referendum on my character. "You're being so selfish," she'd say in front of everyone. "Your sister needs this more than you do. You only care about yourself." The breaking point came 3 months prior. I'd worked a double shift in the critical care unit, 16 hours on my feet, a particularly rough night where we'd lost 2 patients. I came home exhausted, emotionally drained, wanting nothing more than to collapse. Instead, I found Carol and Sophia in my apartment. They'd used the spare key I'd given my parents for emergencies. My car keys were in Carol's hand. "We're taking the BMW," she announced. "Sophia has an important presentation, and her car died again. You can take the bus." I was too tired to fight, too worn down from months of constant pressure and guilt. I let them take the keys. I told myself it would be for a day or two. That was 3 months ago. I never got my car back. Every time I asked, Carol had an excuse. Sophia needed it for a job interview. A weekend trip. She was going through a hard time with her boyfriend. Eventually, Carol stopped making excuses. The car is Sophia's now, she told me flatly. She needs it more than you do. You're just going to have to accept that. My parents wouldn't listen. David just shrugged, telling me to work it out with Carol. My Aunt Brenda said I was being dramatic. It's just a car, they'd all say. Family is more important. But it wasn't just a car. It was the culmination of 25 years of being treated as less than, of watching Sophia get everything handed to her while I worked myself to exhaustion for scraps of approval. It was about respect, autonomy, and the fact that something given to me had been stolen and redistributed without my consent. The pattern started so early I couldn't pinpoint the exact beginning. I remember being 7, bringing home a math test with a perfect score. Carol glanced at it, said good job, and stuck it on the fridge. When Sophia brought home a C+ on her spelling test that same week, Carol threw her a little celebration with cookies and called my grandmother to brag about how hard Sophia had worked. In middle school, I made the honor roll every semester. My parents came to one awards ceremony in 3 years. Sophia joined the drama club and had a minor role in a play. They attended every single performance, brought flowers, and took her out to dinner afterward. When I asked why they hadn't made such a fuss about my academics, Carol said grades were expected from me, while Sophia's participation was brave and special. High school brought more of the same. I worked part-time, maintained a 4.0 GPA, and volunteered at a nursing home. Sophia got mediocre grades and didn't work. Yet, when it came to college, my parents explained they could only help one of us significantly, and Sophia needed the support more because she wasn't as naturally capable as I was. The twisted logic made my head spin. I was being punished for being responsible. My competence had become the justification for giving me less. I took out student loans and worked my way through nursing school. I lived in a cramped apartment with roommates, ate ramen, and pulled all-nighters. Meanwhile, Sophia lived in a nice apartment my parents helped pay for, got a reliable car, and had spending money for concerts. When I graduated, my parents came to the ceremony but left immediately for dinner plans. My grandparents, though, they took me out. They told me how proud they were. A week later, they showed up at my apartment with a sleek, black BMW. Every nurse needs reliable transportation, Grandpa Arthur had said, handing me the keys. Especially one who works the hours you do. We don't want you stranded or unsafe. I cried. It was the first time in years someone had prioritized my needs, had seen my struggles, and tried to ease them without conditions. Carol's reaction to the car was immediate and cold. She called that evening, her voice tight. That's a very generous gift. I hope you thank them properly. Of course I did, I'd said, confused. Good, because your grandparents don't have unlimited resources, you know. They can't just be buying expensive cars for everyone. The implication was clear. I'd taken something that could have gone to Sophia. Never mind that my grandparents had their own money. In Carol's mind, anything good that came to me was stolen from my sister. The first time Carol suggested I let Sophia borrow the car, I'd laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. I explained I needed it for work. Carol sighed dramatically, saying I'd always been the stubborn one. Then came the guilt trips. Every family dinner, Carol would mention Sophia's difficult commute, how worried she was, how unfortunate it was that some people had nice things while others struggled. She never said my name, but everyone knew. Sophia, to her credit, seemed uncomfortable at first, but she started joining in. Must be nice to have such a reliable car, she'd say wistfully. David's approach was different. He'd pull me aside, asking if I couldn't just help out Sophia temporarily. You're always so capable, he'd say. You could figure out the bus system. Sophia is not as adaptable as you are. There was that word again, capable. It had become a weapon, a reason why I should accept less, shrink myself to make room for Sophia's needs. I held firm for months, but the pressure was relentless. Every phone call, every family gathering, every text seemed to circle back. Carol even recruited extended family. My Aunt Brenda made comments about family helping each other. A cousin I barely knew sent a long message about sisterly bonds. The isolation was suffocating. It felt like everyone had decided I was the villain for wanting to keep something that belonged to me. Carol mastered playing the victim, sighing about how she just wanted both her daughters to be safe and happy. Anyone who didn't know the full context would think I was being difficult. Work became my refuge. My supervisor, Maria, a seasoned nurse, noticed my exhaustion. "You look exhausted," she said one day. "And not just physically." "What's going on?" I broke down. She listened without judgment, then said something that stuck. "People who love you don't make you feel guilty for having boundaries. Remember that." But boundaries were hard to maintain when I was being attacked from all sides. Carol escalated. She started showing up at my apartment unannounced, always with an excuse, but the real agenda was always the car. During one visit, she went through my mail and found a bank statement showing I'd been approved for a credit card. "See," she said triumphantly. "You're doing fine financially. You could afford to take Ubers if Sophia needed the car. She's drowning in expenses and doesn't have this kind of cushion." The invasion of privacy should have been the final straw, but I was too tired to fight. I worked 50 to 60 hours a week, dealing with life and death. Coming home to more conflict felt unbearable. Then came the night that changed everything. I'd been assigned to a brutal critical care unit shift. We had a teenage car accident victim who didn't make it, and an elderly patient who coded twice. By hour 14, I was running on fumes. When I clocked out, I found 17 missed calls and 32 texts, all from Carol and Sophia. Sophia's car had died again, across town. She needed to get home and to an early class. Carol demanded I come immediately with my car. I was so tired I could barely see straight. I took the bus home, a 45-minute journey that felt like hours. When I walked into my apartment, they were already there. "Finally," Carol said, as if I'd been out having fun. "Sophia needs to leave in 10 minutes. I must have looked as dead as I felt because even Sophia seemed slightly concerned. "You okay?" she asked. "Double shift. Lost a patient. Need to sleep." "Well, this will only take a minute," Carol said, holding out her hand. "Keys, please." And that's when I should have said no. That's when I should have put my foot down, told them both to leave. Instead, I was so depleted, so worn down, I just handed over the keys. "Just for tonight," I mumbled. "I need it back tomorrow afternoon for my next shift." "Of course," Carol said, but there was something in her smile that should have warned me. Tomorrow afternoon came and went. I texted Sophia, asking when I could pick it up. She responded she needed it for a few more days. Job interviews, she claimed. Carol backed her up, saying it would be cruel to take away transportation when Sophia was trying to improve her employment situation. A few days turned into a week. A week turned into 2. Every request was met with another excuse. I started taking Ubers, watching my savings dwindle. I brought up the car at family dinner. Carol acted like I was being unreasonable. "She's trying to get a job, Chloe. Don't you want your sister to succeed?" "I want my car back. The one that was given to me as a gift. It's just temporary." "Why are you being so inflexible?" The gaslighting was masterful. Somehow, my wanting my own property returned had become the problem. By week 3, I was demanding the car back. Carol stopped answering my calls. David, when I reached him, said I was creating unnecessary drama. I called my Aunt Brenda, hoping for support, but she'd already been primed by Carol. "You have a stable job and income," she told me. "Sophia is struggling. Can't you be generous?" This isn't about generosity, I tried to explain. This is about something that belongs to me being taken. You're being selfish. It's just a car. I hung up. I was done explaining myself. Month 2 arrived. I'd resigned myself to public transportation and the occasional Uber. The financial strain was significant, but more painful was the emotional realization that my family cared so little about my well-being. Every time I saw Sophia's social media posts, pictures of her out with friends, my car visible in the background, it felt like a slap in the face. I considered reporting it stolen, but the thought of getting my own family in legal trouble made me sick. A coworker with a lawyer friend explained that because I'd technically given permission initially, the legal situation was murky. You need to send a certified letter demanding the return of your property, the lawyer advised. Give them a deadline. Then you can involve the police. I drafted the letter, but never sent it. Some part of me kept hoping my family would come to their senses, that they'd recognize how wrong this was and return my car with an apology. I was still hoping for a reconciliation that would never come on their terms. Grandpa Arthur sat quietly through my entire story, his expression growing darker with each detail. Eleanor had tears in her eyes. Carol, who'd been listening with increasing discomfort, tried to interject several times. Dad, you don't understand. Sophia really needed, be quiet, Carol. Grandpa Arthur's voice was ice. I'm not talking to you right now. She actually fell silent, shocked. I'd never heard him speak to her that way. He turned to me. Where's the title to the car? Still in my name, technically, I said. I never signed it over. Grandpa Arthur stood up. Even at his age, he had presence. Eleanor, get me my phone. Carol, you're going to sit right there and not say a word. Chloe, I need Sophia's current address. What happened next was swift and surgical. Grandpa Arthur called his lawyer, Michael Hayes, who'd handled the family's legal affairs for decades. He explained the situation in crisp, clear terms. Then he called a towing company he knew and arranged for the BMW to be recovered from Sophia's apartment complex that very afternoon. But Dad, you can't just, Carol started. I absolutely can. The car is registered to Chloe. What you did is called theft, Carol. I don't care if you're family. You stole a gift that your mother and I gave to your daughter and you gave it to her sister. We're correcting that mistake right now. Carol's face went white. You're embarrassing Sophia. Everyone will see the car being towed. Good. Maybe she'll learn something about taking things that don't belong to her. While we waited, Grandpa Arthur and Eleanor had a quiet conversation I couldn't quite hear. Carol was frantically texting, probably warning Sophia. 2 hours later, I got a text from an unknown number, tow truck driver. BMW secured. Where do you want it delivered? I gave him my address, hardly believing this was happening. My phone immediately started blowing up with calls from Sophia and Carol, which I ignored. But Grandpa Arthur wasn't finished. He called David next, putting him on speakerphone. David, this is Arthur. I'm calling to let you know that the car Eleanor and I gave to Chloe has been returned to her where it belongs. I'm also calling to tell you that your behavior in this situation has been completely unacceptable. You stood by while your wife stole from your own daughter and made her feel worthless. David tried to sputter some excuse, but Grandpa Arthur cut him off. I don't want to hear it. Here's what's going to happen. Eleanor and I are updating our will this week. Carol's inheritance is being significantly reduced. That money will be placed in a trust for Chloe instead, which she'll receive when we pass. Additionally, we're setting up a separate fund for her now, enough to cover any expenses while she finishes her nursing residency and gets on her feet. Consider it reparations for years of terrible parenting. I gasped. Grandpa, you don't have to. He held up his hand. Yes, I do. Your grandmother and I have watched this favoritism for too long. We kept hoping your mother would grow out of it, that she'd see what she was doing to you. But she hasn't, and we're not going to enable it anymore." Carol was crying now, ugly, angry tears. "You're punishing me for trying to help both my daughters. You're choosing Chloe over me." "No," Eleanor said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was firm but sad. "We're correcting an imbalance that you created. We love both our granddaughters, Carol. But you clearly don't, and that breaks my heart." The implications hung in the air. Carol looked like she'd been slapped. The room fell into a tense silence. I could see Carol processing what had just happened, her face cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been shame, if she'd been capable of genuine self-reflection. Grandpa Arthur wasn't done. He pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket. He'd always been the type to keep meticulous records. "Do you want to know what finally made me realize how serious this was?" he asked, looking directly at Carol. "It wasn't just today. Eleanor and I have been keeping track for the past 5 years. We thought maybe we were imagining things, so we wrote it down." He adjusted his reading glasses and began recounting entries. June 2020, Chloe graduates nursing school with honors. We attend. Carol and David arrive late, leave immediately, don't attend any celebration. November 2020, Sophia changes her college major for the 3rd time. Carol posts on social media about how proud she is of Sophia's journey of self-discovery and shares 12 photos from a celebratory dinner. Carol opened her mouth to protest, but Grandpa Arthur continued. March 2021, Chloe is promoted to a specialized position in the critical care unit after only 8 months, something her supervisor told us typically takes several years. We called to congratulate her. Carol, when we mention it, says that's nice and changes the subject to Sophia's new boyfriend. May 2021, Sophia fails 2 classes and needs an extra semester to graduate. Carol spends 3 hours on the phone with us explaining all the reasons it wasn't Sophia's fault: bad professors, unfair grading, personal stress. I'd never realized my grandparents had been paying such close attention. Hearing it all laid out chronologically was jarring. Each example alone seemed small, explainable. Together, they formed an undeniable pattern. September 2021, we give Chloe the BMW for her birthday. Within a week, Carol calls us asking if we'd considered that Sophia might also need help with transportation. December 2021, Chloe works through Christmas Day at the hospital because several nurses called in sick. Carol complains at Christmas dinner that Chloe always prioritizes work over family and ruins holidays. Sophia, who slept until noon, is praised for bringing such wonderful energy to the celebration. Eleanor picked up where Grandpa Arthur left off, her voice steady but sad. February 2022, Chloe mentioned she'd been having trouble sleeping due to stress from work and family pressure. I suggested she talk to her mother about it. Carol's response, which Chloe told me about later, was that stress is part of being an adult and that she needs to toughen up. That same month, Sophia has a minor disagreement with her roommate. Carol drives across town at midnight to comfort her and brings her home to stay for a week. Carol found her voice shrill and defensive. "You're taking everything out of context. You're making me sound like a monster. I love both my daughters equally." "Then show it," Grandpa Arthur said simply. "Because for years, your actions have told a different story." He closed the notebook. "This isn't about the car, Carol. The car is just the breaking point. This is about 25 years of making one daughter feel invisible, while the other gets unconditional support and endless second chances. Chloe has worked herself to exhaustion, trying to earn a fraction of the attention and approval you give Sophia freely. That's not fair." Carol protested. "Chloe never needed me the way Sophia does. She's always been independent, always figured things out on her own. Sophia needs more support. Do you hear yourself?" Eleanor asked gently. You're saying you neglected one daughter because she was competent enough to survive the neglect. That's not parenting, Carol. That's failing the child who made it easiest for you. The words landed like physical blows. I'd never heard anyone articulate exactly what I'd felt my entire life. I'd been punished for being low maintenance, for not demanding attention, for making my mother's life easier by requiring less. Grandpa Arthur stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden before turning back to face us. When Chloe was 16, she won a scholarship competition. Do you remember that, Carol? Carol frowned vaguely. It was a $5,000 scholarship for an essay about community service. The award ceremony was on a Tuesday evening in April. Chloe asked if you'd come. Do you remember what you said? Carol was silent. You said you couldn't make it because Sophia had a friend coming over for a school project and you needed to be home to supervise. Chloe told us she understood. But Eleanor and I went to that ceremony. We watched Chloe walk up on stage to accept her award. She was beaming. Then we watched her face scan the audience, looking for you. The moment she realized you weren't there, something dimmed in her eyes. I'd forgotten about that night. Or maybe I'd buried it. But hearing Grandpa Arthur describe it brought everything back. The excitement, the hope that maybe this achievement would finally get Carol's attention, the crushing disappointment when she didn't show. She was 16 years old, Eleanor added softly. She won a competitive scholarship against applicants from across the state, and her own mother couldn't be bothered to show up. But 3 weeks later, you took a half-day off work to attend Sophia's spring concert where she sang backup in one song. I don't have to justify every parenting decision I made to you, Carol said, but her voice lacked conviction. No, you don't, Grandpa Arthur agreed. But you do need to understand that decisions have consequences. Chloe has spent her entire life accommodating everyone else's needs. Bending over backward to be easy, asking for nothing. And the one time she had something that was truly hers, you took it and gave it away like it meant nothing. He moved to stand beside my chair, his hand resting protectively on my shoulder. What you did with that car wasn't about transportation or helping Sophia. It was about reminding Chloe that even the gifts she receives, even the recognition she earns, can be redistributed if you decide someone else deserves them more. It was about maintaining a hierarchy where Sophia's needs will always trump Chloe's rights. Carol was full-on crying now, mascara running. You're making me out to be some kind of abusive parent. I've done my best. Do you have any idea how hard it is raising two daughters with completely different personalities and needs? Yes, actually, Eleanor said. We raised two daughters ourselves. Your sister Sarah was easy, responsible, studious, never caused problems. You were more challenging, impulsive, emotional, constantly in some kind of crisis. And you know what we didn't do? We didn't give Sarah less love and attention because she required less maintenance. We didn't punish her confidence by giving her fewer resources. We didn't redistribute her belongings to you because you needed them more. The comparison clearly stung. Carol had spent years playing the victim. Having her own mother call out the pattern publicly was a shock to her system. Grandpa Arthur pulled out his phone and made another call, this time to Michael Hayes, his lawyer. He put it on speaker. Michael, it's Arthur Winters. I need you to start drafting an amendment to our will. Effective immediately, we're reallocating portions of Carol's inheritance to establish a trust for our granddaughter, Chloe. I'll email you the specific amounts later today, but I want the paperwork started now. Understood, Arthur, Michael's voice came through clearly. I'll have the preliminary documents ready by Monday. Will you need this expedited? Yes, I want everything finalized within 2 weeks. Consider it done. Grandpa Arthur ended the call and looked at Carol. That trust will be irrevocable, Carol. When Eleanor and I pass, Chloe will be provided for, regardless of what you or David do. She'll have money for a house, for emergencies, for building a life without having to constantly struggle. Consider it compensation for the inheritance of parental love and support that she should have received but didn't. Carol stood abruptly, her purse clutched to her chest. Fine, you've made your point. You've humiliated me, threatened to disinherit me, and turned my own daughter against me. I hope you're satisfied. No one turned Chloe against you, Eleanor said quietly. You did that yourself. One dismissal at a time, one redistribution of affection at a time. We're just finally acknowledging reality. Carol stormed toward the door, then stopped and turned back to me. Her expression was a mixture of rage and something that might have been hurt. You couldn't just handle this privately, could you? You had to run to your grandparents and make me look like a villain. You've always been so good at playing the victim. The accusation was so absurd, so completely inverted from reality, that I almost laughed. But I was too tired, too emotionally wrung out. Instead, I just looked at her steadily. I came here today by taxi because I don't have my car, I said calmly. The car that was given to me as a gift and then taken away. That's not playing the victim. That's stating a fact. Everything that happened after that was Grandpa's choice, not mine. You could have handled this like an adult instead of tattling to your grandparents. I tried for 3 months, I said. I asked nicely. I asked firmly. I sent text messages and made phone calls. You refused to listen. You refused to return my property. What exactly was I supposed to do? She had no answer for that. With a final glare at all of us, she stalked out, the front door slamming behind her. Grandpa Arthur turned. Furthermore, family gatherings will be interesting from now on. Chloe will always be invited. Carol and David, your invitations are conditional on you treating Chloe with basic respect and dignity. Sophia is still welcome. She's young and has been raised with warped values, but she can still learn better if she chooses to. He stood up and put his hand on my shoulder. Chloe, I'm sorry we didn't see this clearly before. I'm sorry we didn't protect you from this mistreatment. That changes now. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. I'd been strong for so long, pushing down the hurt and telling myself it didn't matter. Having someone validate my experience, having someone stand up for me without qualifications or conditions, it broke something open in my chest. Eleanor hugged me, then Grandpa Arthur joined in, and for the first time in years, I felt truly safe. Carol stormed out, and David called several times trying to negotiate, but Grandpa Arthur ignored the calls. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about normal family things, without the undercurrent of tension I'd grown so accustomed to. That evening, the BMW was delivered to my apartment building. It was exactly as I'd left it 3 months ago, except for fast food wrappers in the backseat and an empty gas tank. I didn't even care. It was mine again. The aftermath was predictably dramatic. Sophia called me crying, accusing me of ruining her life. Carol sent long text messages about betrayal. David tried the reasonable approach, asking if we could all just move past this without anyone actually apologizing. I blocked Carol's number. I told David I'd have a relationship with him if he went to family therapy with me, which he declined. Sophia, I left unblocked, hoping she might eventually understand. Some extended family members tried to guilt me, calling me selfish. My Aunt Brenda said I was destroying the family over material possessions. I politely explained the situation once, and when she continued to blame me, I stopped taking her calls, too. But there were surprises. My cousin Ethan reached out to tell me he'd experienced similar favoritism and understood. A few of Eleanor's friends, hearing about the situation, made a point of telling me how proud they were that I'd stood up for myself. Even some of my coworkers were outraged on my behalf. The following month, my grandparents made good on their promises. Their lawyer contacted me about the trust fund, and they set up an account with $50,000 for immediate use. "You've worked so hard," Eleanor said when we had lunch. "You deserve to enjoy your life, not just survive it." With some of that money, I paid off a chunk of student loans. I bought a nice laptop and booked a weekend trip to the mountains with friends, something I'd never felt I could afford before. But the biggest change was internal. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel guilty about taking up space or having nice things. I didn't feel like I had to apologize for existing or constantly prove my worth. My grandparents had given me something more valuable than money or a car. They'd given me validation and the understanding that I deserved to be treated with respect. The holiday season approached with trepidation. Thanksgiving had always been at my parents' house. Eleanor solved the problem by announcing she and Grandpa Arthur would host. "Everyone is invited," she said, "but there will be ground rules: no discussing the car situation, no passive-aggressive comments, no playing favorites. Anyone who can't abide by those rules can leave." Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and bright. I drove to my grandparents' house in my BMW, which I had detailed and serviced. It felt like a small act of defiance, but mostly it just felt good to have reliable transportation again. My parents were already there, sitting stiffly. Carol wouldn't look at me. David gave me a weak smile. Sophia wasn't there. She'd chosen to spend Thanksgiving with her boyfriend's family, which was probably for the best. The atmosphere was tense at first, but Eleanor was a force of nature, keeping conversation flowing and steering away from dangerous topics. Dinner was elaborate and delicious. Grandpa Arthur said grace, adding a pointed line about being grateful for family who showed up for each other in meaningful ways. Carol flinched but said nothing. After dinner, Grandpa Arthur asked me to step outside onto the back patio. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "How are you really doing?" he asked, his breath fogging in the cold air. "Better?" I said. "Honestly, it's still hard sometimes. I miss having a normal family, or at least the illusion of one, but I don't miss feeling like garbage all the time." He nodded. "Your grandmother and I have been talking. We want you to know that no matter what happens with your parents, you'll always have us. And when we're gone, you'll be taken care of. We've made sure of it." "Please don't talk about being gone," I said, my voice cracking. "You're two of the only people who have ever really seen me." "Then we did something right," he said, pulling me into a hug. "And you're going to do amazing things, Chloe. Don't let anyone dim your light." We stood there for a moment. I thought about the scared, exhausted version of myself from a few months ago, who'd let someone take her car keys because she was too beaten down to fight anymore. That version felt like a different person now. Inside, I could hear laughter and conversation. My family gathering continued, awkward but functional, held together by my grandparents' sheer will and clear boundaries. Over the following months, things shifted into a new normal. Carol eventually sent a short apology text that read more like, "I'm sorry you were hurt," than, "I'm sorry for what I did, but it was something." We maintained a distant, cordial relationship. David and I went to 2 therapy sessions before he stopped showing up, claiming work conflicts. I let it go. Sophia and I eventually had a conversation about 6 months after the car incident. She called me out of the blue, her voice small. "I didn't realize how bad it was for you growing up," she said. "Mom always made it seem like you were just difficult, but I've been thinking about it, and I remember things differently now. I'm sorry I took the car. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you." It wasn't everything I needed to hear, but it was genuine. We made plans to get coffee, taking small steps toward rebuilding some kind of relationship. She'd started therapy herself and was working through her own realizations about our family dynamics. As for me, I threw myself into my work and my life. I got a promotion, taking a position in the cardiac unit I'd been eyeing for over a year. I started dating someone I met through a friend, a teacher named Daniel, who was kind and stable and treated me like I mattered. I took up painting again, something I'd loved as a teenager but abandoned because Carol always made dismissive comments about it being a waste of time. My grandparents remained my anchors. Dinner at their house every other Sunday became a tradition. They celebrated my wins and supported me through my struggles, asking nothing in return except that I live authentically and refuse to accept mistreatment. One Sunday afternoon, about a year after the car incident, Grandpa Arthur and I were sitting on their back porch again. It had become our spot for real conversations. "You know what I'm most proud of?" he asked suddenly. "What?" "That you didn't let bitterness consume you. You could have become angry and vindictive. Instead, you set boundaries, protected yourself, and kept your heart open to the people who deserved it. That takes real strength." I smiled. "I learned from the best." "No," he said, shaking his head. "That was all you, kiddo. We just reminded you of what you already knew." Looking back now, I can see that day, the day I arrived by taxi, and Carol so casually announced she'd given away my car, as a turning point. Not because of the car itself, but because it was the moment my grandparents finally saw the full picture of what had been happening. It was the moment someone in my family chose me unequivocally and without conditions. The BMW still runs great. I take good care of it now. But it's become more than transportation. Every time I slide into the driver's seat, I remember that I'm worth fighting for. I remember that boundaries aren't selfish, that self-respect isn't optional, and that family should build you up, not tear you down. My grandfather is 80 now. My grandmother is 77. They're still sharp and active, still hosting Sunday dinners. But I know that someday, probably sooner than I'd like, they won't be here anymore. When that day comes, I'll grieve deeply. But I'll also carry forward the greatest gift they gave me, the knowledge that I deserve to take up space in this world, to have my own things, to be treated with dignity and love. And whenever someone tries to diminish me or make me feel small, I'll remember Grandpa Arthur's face that day, the quiet fury, the decisive action, the absolute refusal to let his granddaughter be treated as less than. I'll remember that sometimes love means drawing hard lines and holding people accountable. I'll remember that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. The taxi ride that started this whole chain of events cost me $23. The year of boundary setting and family drama that followed cost me relationships with people who never truly valued me. But what I gained was priceless: self-respect, validation, and the unshakable knowledge that I am enough exactly as I am. Carol still doesn't fully understand what she did wrong. David remains conflict avoidant. Sophia is learning and growing, slowly, rebuilding trust. And me? I'm driving forward, literally and metaphorically, in the car my grandparents gave me as a symbol of their love and pride. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. Sometimes it's simply reclaiming what was yours, setting boundaries that protect your peace, and living well despite the people who try to make you small. Sometimes it's having someone in your corner who sees clearly, acts decisively, and reminds you that you are never the problem. That's exactly what my grandfather did. And it made me truly, deeply proud, not just of him, but of myself for finally accepting the support I deserved all along. What would you have done if your family had tried to take away something so meaningful to you?